alternate needs to take his place.
No.
Who's the alternate?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
we may not have a vote because we don't have a quorum.
I don't think so. You're right.
Oh, there he is.
No voting, but we
No.
listen and we know.
Because District 3 is still short people. Can't believe they haven't done anything about it.
Would you run down there and tell him? Would you run down there and
Volunteers,
ask him?
man. Ain't no money in
No,
volunteering.
Tobin isn't looking for people. He's deliberately not looking for people. Put the blame right on his back.
Their county,
How do you know he isn't looking for people?
correct.
Because there's not like this road here.
Thanks, Steve.
But we're in a state, so ours, we have Roosevelt Jones, we have.
Or you come to an outfit like this and you think you can make a difference or have some input, and then the nomenclature is so far out in outer space, you don't know what the hell anybody's talking about.
Correct.
Yeah, send it to me, yeah, because ours is good for only 8.
The county did it, and then we were like, hey, why don't you tell us about these things? And I'm like, I'm not telling you other municipalities.
Yeah, no, please share me that.
Yeah.
Hey, so, I just heard, congratulations. You need
So Rita's out after this term, huh?
Who?
Rita Pritchard.
Yeah, she's, her term is up. I know one of the gentlemen that's running to take her place.
I know Rita on a regular basis.
Good morning, everybody. Would you please, thank you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll get started here. As you can see, Philip's not going to be here today, so I'm going to be the chair for both committees. So please be patient with me. Make sure I do it right. First order of business is public comment. Do we have any public comment today? Doesn't look like it. Next is the executive director's report. Good morning, Georgiana.
Good morning. Well, welcome, members. It's great to see everyone this morning. In your packet, you have the draft governing board minutes of October the 12th. And the governing board did approve the TPO's 2024 legislative priorities and the new TPO membership apportionment plan. They also received presentations on the 2022 State of the System report, the Vision Zero annual update, and the public participation plan measures of effectiveness. So they had a nice full agenda. Last week, the TPO facilitated a quiet zone workshop with the Federal Railroad Administration representatives and our local jurisdictions. And the purpose was really to provide an overview of quiet zones, understand the process, and how to use the quiet zone calculator to really understand the risk index. There were a lot of really good questions, a lot of good conversation at the meeting. Roy Newton with FRA has agreed to come and meet with each one of the local governments as needed, one-on-one, to answer any questions and to help set up a quiet zone if that's what they choose to do. But really the first step is to file a notice of intent. So clearly there are benefits and drawbacks for establishing a quiet zone, but Brevard County and the cities are assessing the next steps. And the TPO is here to provide support as needed to our cities and Brevard County. Really the decision, will be based on what the elected leaders in those areas feel is best for the community, taking into account quality of life as well as safety concerns. So we will provide you any updates as that moves forward. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much, Georgiana. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items today. First one is the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee's meeting minutes from October 10th, 2023. The next one is Resolution 24-09, Urbanized Area Boundaries. 3, Work Order 24-09, K as in Kilo, Mobility on Demand, Scope of Services. And the last one is the 2024 meeting calendar, which is in the packet. I would look for a motion from the TAC for approval of the consent agenda. Motion by Jared. Do I have a second? Second by Devin, and we'll go over to the CAC.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Have a comment on,
Adam Kohler, District 1.
Motion by Adam.
I'll second for discussion. On the mobility on demand, in the work order, there's 2 items that I found amusing, interesting, and possibly I have issues with. The first, it said that tourists would be one of the groups that are being looked at. As far as I'm concerned, the hotel and tourist industry can pay for the damn tourists if they're going to get mobility on demand. And don't look at me as a taxpayer to do it. And the second thing, I noticed there was e-bikes in there. And anytime I see e-bikes pop up, you know, I automatically have like issues. Do they know how to ride? Now these tourists, they've been to our bars entertaining themselves, and now they're going to jump on the e-bike and haul butt down A1A. And those are just 2 items I looked at, and I'm just bringing them up that they're in there.
Well, thank you, Pete. We appreciate your comments. From the CAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda passes. And from the TAC, all those signify by saying aye for approval. Consent agenda approved. Okay, we'll move on to the action items. The first one is the annual election of officers. And the annual election of officers will be for a period from January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. I would look for nominations for the chair for the TAC.
I'll make a nomination for Cliff Graham to be the TAC chair.
Okay, Devin, thank you. Are there any other nominations for chair of the TAC? Okay, we'll close that nomination. Is there a motion to nominate me as the chair of the TAC? No, just need one motion. Okay, Steve, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. I look forward to it. Next, we'll look for nominations for a vice chair. Currently, Steve is the vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair for the TAC?
Nominate Steve again.
Okay, Jared nominates Steve. Are there any other nominations? Okay, we'll close the nominations. Do I have a motion to nominate Steve as vice chair?
I'll make a motion.
Jared? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, item passes. Congratulations. Okay, we'll move on to the CAC. Like I said, Philip's not here, but we'll look for a nomination for the chair of the CAC. Is there a nomination? Yes, Arlen.
Nominate Cliff again.
nominate Phil.
Phil, I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
I'll second that. You're doing such a good job, Cliff.
No, I knew what you meant, Arlen. I knew what you meant. Okay, good. Okay, so Arlen nominates Phil. Are there any other nominations for chair of the CAC? Okay, we'll close the nominations. And I would look for a motion to nominate Phil as the chair of the CAC for another year.
So moved. Greg Stoll.
Okay, Greg makes that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item passes. Vice chair. Look for a nomination for vice chair of the CAC. Yes, sir.
I move to nominate Bill to retain his seat as vice chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? If not, we'll close the nominations. Do we have a motion to elect Bill as the vice chair of the CAC?
So moved.
Okay, Guy, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item passes. Who nominated, Gil nominated Bill for vice chair, if that was the question. Okay, thank you. That was action item A. We'll move on to action item B, which is resolution 24-10, 2045 Long-Range Transportation Plan Amendment number 5.
Good morning, Debbie Flynn, Space Coast TPO Transportation Planner. There are occasionally times when the Space Coast TPO may find it necessary to amend the long-range transportation plan outside of the 5-year update cycle. Today, the Space Coast TPO is requesting to advance 2 projects in the long-range transportation plan. State Road 524 widening project has been updated to reflect the funding change in Table 11.2, Other Arterial State Federal Funds projects of the LRTP, with an estimated cost of $7.4 million for design for fiscal year 25. The amendment also includes a minor administrative update to Malabar Road widening project in Table 11.4, mixed funding projects of the LRTP, with an estimated cost of $9.975 million for design for fiscal year 24. The estimated costs reflect current funding and estimates. The changes will not impact the cost feasibility of the current or future projects. The Space Coast TPO seeks to amend the 2045 Long-Range Transportation Plan by Resolution Number 2410, 2045 Long-Range Transportation Plan Amendment Number 5, in order to comply with planning consistency requirements. An amendment requires public review and comment in accordance with the public involvement process of the LRTP amendments. Such notice was conducted with posting of the Space Coast TPO December 14th meeting notice and included with meeting agenda posted on the Space Coast TPO's website on December 4th. Space Coast TPO is requesting approval for Resolution Number 2410, 2045 Long-Range Transportation Plan Amendment Number 5.
Thank you, Debbie. Are there any questions for Debbie or any discussion? Okay. If not, I would look for a motion for approval from the TAC. Thank you, Steve. We have a motion from Steve to approve. Do I have a second? Second by Devin. We'll go over to the CAC. Is there a motion? Josiah, thank you. Is there a second from the CAC?
Second.
Henry, looks like Henry. Got it. Thank you, Henry. And from the CAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, item passes. We'll go back to the TAC. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Resolution 24-10 passes. Next, Resolution 24-11, fiscal year 24 through 28 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment. Morning, Georgiana.
Good morning. This one is mine. This is really another housekeeping item. The Florida Department of Transportation has requested 2 amendments to our currently adopted Transportation Improvement Program. And the first one is a new project, and it's 5310 operating funding for the Palm Bay, Melbourne urbanized area boundary. It is operating funds, $112,604 in current year. And this is transit funding being provided through the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. And then the next amendment is a new project on State Road 405. This is South Street in Titusville. And this is for a planning study to look at the area between State Road 50 and Angela Lane. This is for a potential widening project for the future. And it's for $575,000 in fiscal year '24. This is using TPO funding. This is a project that was very important for the city of Titusville due to traffic volumes on that corridor. But this is the initial, very high-level phase to look at the planning study on that corridor. And so we are asking for a motion to approve and amend our fiscal year '24 through '28 Transportation Improvement Program.
Questions for Georgiana? Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, hi, Georgiana.
Hello.
Long time no see. Well, it seems like we were talking about this segment at the Bicycle Trails Committee, and it was a segment within this segment, and the issue was sidewalks and why sidewalks disappeared from the original to the current. And for some reason, this is playing into it in my mind. If you're looking to do a 4.1 mile segment on 405 and you have a minor segment within that, it just makes planning sense that you would tie the bike trails and the sidewalks into the overall long-range scheme of things. And I wasn't aware of that at the.
I did, Sarah and I, we did get clarification on that from the DOT project manager. And what Pete is referring to, we had a citizen that attended our Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Advisory Committee expressing concerns that on an upcoming resurfacing project on on Columbia Boulevard. So when he presented it to us, we thought it was South Street, which is this segment. It was actually Columbia Boulevard. And so it is a resurfacing project, but the department is pulling back the addition of the sidewalks on that project. It did not go to the public, so there was not a public meeting, but the project manager did express that due to meeting their resurfacing targets and funding, they were going to pull out the sidewalks, the proposed sidewalks on that project. So it was a different segment, but the sidewalks are coming out is what we were told.
The end.
Any other questions for Georgiana? Any discussion? From the TAC, I'd look for a motion. We have a motion. Thank you. Look for a second. Second by Jared. We'll send it over to the CAC. From the CAC, do we have a motion? Josiah? Do we have a second? Arlen? And for the CAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. From the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Resolution 24-11 passes. Yes. KB. Thank you, sir. Okay, our next item is the 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan Goals and Objectives.
To change
Good morning.
to put it on.
Good morning, thank you. Nick Lepp from HDR, here to present the 2050 Long-Range Plan Goals and Objectives for this next plan update. So the long-range transportation plan, this is something that the TPO has to adopt every 5 years. This is the long-range vision. This is where all those projects that go into the TIP and we talk about for the list of priority projects come from. This is what we look at for 2050 as our horizon and what could be cost feasible in terms of what projects we believe that we could fund over the next 20 years for transportation improvements throughout the region. Like I said, this long-range plan is the vision, is the basis for all projects that would receive federal or state funding that would go into the Transportation Improvement Program that you just amended right now. So we're talking about these projects in that long range right during this session as we start developing this 2050 long-range plan over the next 2 years. But that list of priority projects, that's that bridge that gaps those projects. Those are the ones that we determine that are cost feasible and can go into the TIP. Ultimately funded for the next 5 years and actually to be implemented. So some of the projects that are included in there, we have the operational analysis, which would be for transit or even that planning study that Georgiana talked about. The project design, right-of-way, and ultimately construction is all considered as part of this long-range plan. And how can we get those projects implemented over that 20-year, 20-plus year horizon? So with that are all these goals and objectives that help form that basis for the plan itself as we start developing the cost feasible plan, making sure that we're in line with the vision of the community and the region. So looking at this plan, we didn't think there was a lot of change that needed from the 2045 to 2050. Really did establish a good vision for the region, but we just needed to update it for based on the latest legislation that came out of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and really just to update a couple items. So under the safety emphasis, you have 4 major areas. So with the safety goal, we just updated a little bit where it was to improve safety and security for all users. We just updated that a little to have safe, secure, and equitable multimodal transportation system for all users. Again, sticking with the same theme and overall emphasis, and then updating some of those objectives to help support that legislation, like with the Vision Zero, promoting Vision Zero, and the safe systems approach that came out of the Safe Streets for All work that FHWA and FTA. Also with the multimodal options, we didn't see too much change within this one, just overall quality of life and connected and accessible multimodal transportation system. You heard multimodal get inserted into the last 2 goals as we're trying to look at the system in total. As you can tell with this 2050 plan, and we have a lot of modes within this. We're not trying to just look at roadways, we're trying to look at all modes as term bike, ped, transit, even space, freight, and airport as we're looking at this in the plan. As we start linking transportation and land use as an emphasis, we didn't see much change needed to the overall goal within this, just improving the objectives to add a little bit more of that TOD emphasis as we're looking at the connection between transit, land use, and mobility within the region, and also supporting the new legislation. And then as for the sustainable equity and resiliency, didn't see much change needed again for this one, just adding that sustainable and equitable to that goal as we're going forward in the emphasis area. And then looking at adding that vulnerability in the flooding area within the objectives to really help support some of those new areas that we'll be identifying within the plan as needs or actually something that could be improved upon. Also included with this plan, as I said, is a fully multimodal transportation plan. We're including the transit development plan update within this long-range plan. So as we're looking out at 2050, we'll have that same horizon in those interim years for the transit development plan, looking at a 2035 horizon. So we're dealing with the same 5-year buckets of funding as we're talking about capital improvements for transit and overall mobility within the region. So within that, there are also other goals that help support it. Now, these are 2 different plans with 2 different agencies, but we want to make sure the goals align as much as possible. So holding under the safety emphasis, there are 2 goals within the TDP that help support safety emphasis, but both of those are very well aligned with what we're trying to do for the Advanced 2050 goals. So all trying to meet towards those same lines of that vision of mobility in the future. So looking at providing a safe and equitable transit system, very similar to the old one, but then also create and maintain an accessible, efficient, and effective multimodal transportation system. Just both of those combined also support that safety element or safety goal that we just identified for Advanced 2050. So that way both of these plans, like I said, will be aligned in the future. So as we're looking at aligning both those, we wanted to really establish and get these goals and objectives adopted as that foundation as we develop the plan over the next 18 months, and we'll be coming back to you with those needs and cost feasible and financial analysis. But this is the basis for us developing that plan, and we're looking for approval of the overall goals and objectives for the 2050 plan. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Good job. Any questions for Nick? Yes, sir.
Hi, sorry, I'm Eric Fielding. So you mentioned that the goals in the two. You mentioned the goals in the two plans are aligned, but can you discuss to what extent they're the same, or there is a difference because of how they're published, or what would be a rationale for having a goal that's different in one of the plans versus the other?
So all the goals and objectives will be tied to, say, performance measures. So I just like to use the safety one because it's the easiest. So with all of the safety performance measures that we've been talking about here for the TPO, it's vulnerable users, it's on the roadway, it's crossing the street. Now for transit, they also have to deal with slip and falls, something that may happen on the bus. So though we're all trying to deal with safety for all users, both organizations have to look at it in a little different way, a little bit more for SCAT as they're looking at their users versus the TPO. So that is the biggest example, but they're still aligned for safety.
Thank you. Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed a new term from 45 to 50 called equitable. And, you know, equitable is one of those subjective things that we all have a different definition of. Like my definition of equitable is you should be able to run 1 mile to the bus stop in 6 minutes. That might not be yours. So can you define what this equitable goal is?
Sure. As we're looking at equity within the transportation plan and distributing really the federal and state, I don't want to just say funding because it's not just funding. It's actually planning for mobility in the future. So looking at the plans and the needs, how are we equitably distributing really this plan to make sure we're accommodating everybody, all users, almost like the complete streets approach, but in terms of a larger plan itself, it's not just going to be focused on roadways because not everybody has a car. So we have to make sure that we're looking at a plan that can support people that are transportation disadvantaged, the freight and goods movement within the area, tourism and economic development, also the residents, the businesses, all of that within the plan, and looking at the mobility of all of these users as it's going to be the most efficient and equitable and financially feasible possible.
So if I understood that correctly, if I don't have a car, my opportunity, time and money to get where I want to go should be the same as Cliff in his bicycle or Adam in his car. Is that what you're trying to say? You're trying to equalize the playing field in time and resources, irregardless of income?
Yes, we're trying to find the most appropriate transportation improvements that solve the region's problems, whether or not it's whatever mode it may be. So without looking at the mode, but what is the most appropriate funding for that mobility improvement that could go forward with federal and state funding that serves all users.
And when you were looking in Brevard County, did you see a big area of inequality as far as transportation opportunities go?
Well, that's what we're going to be investigating again. There have been a lot of studies on the equality and where transportation disadvantaged are currently. Now it's going to be looking at not only where they are, but where do they need to go? What corridors do they ride at? And how do we make sure that we're distributing that funding that works for both complete streets, cars, freight and goods, sidewalks to make the mobility the most appropriate? Yes.
Well, that first study that was in the consent agenda seemed to lean into what equitable is, where it was more a mobility study, like how does a person get from point A to point B and have the same opportunity. I happen to be in an area where I see a lot of inequity. I see poor people with children have to walk to a bus stop and wait for a bus and get to the medical care center for their kids. I see people walking, because they can't afford a bus. And I see a lot of that, not that I'm sympathetic, that's just the reality that's out there. And when you say equitable, So the person that's walking because he can't afford a bus, we give him $2 so he can jump on the Lynx line, or give him a pass so he doesn't have to pay anything, and we subsidize the cost. I mean, these are real issues. And we have a lot of poor people getting into our system really quick. Even in Brevard County, we have large homeless camps starting to pop up all over the place. And these folks need service whether we like it or not. So where are we going with this? We have any idea, or we going to study it, or?
We are. So we just finished up doing the Transit Development Plan rider surveys, where we started trying to figure out really what could we do to help support or enhance the transit service, along with the roadway and sidewalk and bike ped that the TPO will be looking at for those capital improvements. So putting these two plans together is hopefully going to start really addressing a lot of that equity that we were talking about that's been disconnected as these plans have been done, though together and complementary, but still separate. And hopefully this time they will be complementary to each other to develop that plan under those same horizons.
So less money for roads and more money for e-bikes.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
So
Yes.
Pete, the investments for transit and the future operational is really, it's the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners. So, as we develop these plans, there's got to be some sort of investment made into transit. And so part of what we'll be doing is meeting with county commissioners to talk with them, as to what their thoughts are and where they feel the needs are. But that's a very important component, is the funding. The FHWA funding or the TPO's funding cannot be used for operations of the transit system. So that funding has got to come from the county. So we're still in the very early stages, but that's a very, you bring up some very good points, and investment into that system is going to be important.
Well, I mentioned it because even though I may not be 100% sympathetic for all cases, I see a lot of need out there, and I do see a lot of inequity, and a lot of these people can't afford a car, but yet they should be able to get essential services for their life. And a big part of it is that we're importing or letting so many people come across the border that the wages are so low that they can't afford the amenities that we're accustomed to. Well, somebody's getting advantage. Now, I saw Orlando with their tourist industry, 4.6 people per house, and they have to be that high for the folks that work those industries just to be able to live there. And that's just the way it is, and they can't afford the amenities that are required to sustain. So where does the investment come from? And that's just the reality of the situation. There's a big inequity there, and I'm not for welfare, I'm not. But we've created a situation where there's no other way out of it by our immigration. And we have to deal with it, and that's just a reality. Either that or the tourist industry's got to pick it up and start paying people enough to where they can afford a house, where they can afford a car. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. So with that said, that's a big part of the future, and I was kind of glad to see it included.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Good discussion. Any other questions
I would just
for
like
Nick?
to make
Yes.
a reminder
Yes,
that we're at the very beginning of the LRTP, and that this is establishing the goals and objectives to move forward into looking at the financial, feasibility and the needs. And so there will be other opportunities for comments, and we definitely, will be looking into the equity issue.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
Any other questions for Nick? Any discussion from the TAC? If not, I'd look for a motion for approval from the TAC. Devin makes the motion. Second? Could we have a second? Second by Steve. We'll go over to the CAC. Any discussion on this item from the CAC? If not, I'd look for a motion for approval.
Second.
Arlen, and a second from Pete. From the CAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And from the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Item passes. That's the end of our action items for today. Next up is presentations. We do have one presentation today. It's from FDOT District 5, and it's on fiscal year 25 through fiscal year 29 work program public hearing. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning again. My name is Lisa Busher. I am the District 5 Work Program Administrator, and as indicated, I'm here this morning to present to you our work program for fiscal years 25 through 29. So the department's work program is a listing of transportation needs planned for the upcoming 5-year period. FDOT develops the 5-year work program in partnerships with communities, metropolitan and transportation planning organizations, local governments, state and federal agencies, modal partners, and regional entities. Building of the tentative work program is a recurring annual process where we allocate funds for priority transportation projects for the upcoming 5 years. For this cycle, as I said, we're talking about fiscal year 25 through fiscal year 29, which begins July 1st of 2024 and ends June 30th of 2029. Each district's upcoming 5-year needs are compiled for development of the department's tentative 5-year program and are submitted to central office, the legislature, and the governor for approval. FDOT manages the work program on a fiscal year basis, with each year starting on July 1st and ending on June 30th the following year. So for example, our upcoming fiscal year 25 will run from July 1st of 2024 through June 30th of 2025. And this slide here just outlines a few of the key dates and actions that will take place prior to the work program being adopted on July 1st of 2024. So increasing price trends continue to be a major influence for our work program. In comparison to last year, this year we're seeing less cost variability and more competitive bids on projects. However, construction prices for material and labor resources continue to be on the rise. This is due to several factors, including supply chain issues, material and labor shortages, and most notably inflation. Within this table, you get a glimpse of cost increases that have impacted transportation projects over the last 3 years. In 2023, $363 million worth of contract price adjustments were issued to contractors to compensate them for significant material cost increases and/or material procurement delays in construction. And this includes, but is not limited to, steel, concrete, aluminum, PVC, mast arms, copper, and signs. Below this is the department's cost of material per mile model for a 4-lane rural roadway typical. Both models have progressively increased since 2021. In the last year, the cost of materials per mile based on the new construction index increased 17%, with the resurfacing index reflecting a material cost increase of 26.6%. And if you are interested in this type of information, cost per mile models, there's a lot of additional information out on the department's website, but we just wanted to provide a general representation of these types of impacts. So aside from these cost implications on project costs, there were also a few critical considerations as we built and balanced the tentative work program this cycle. First are our allocation and revenue projections, which are the programming support for project needs. We continue to be conservative with these projections and are reflecting low growth forecasts. Next are resurfacing program adjustments. The department implemented resurfacing allocation formula and lane mile adjustments this cycle to ensure we maintain and improve statewide pavement quality standards that are set by statute. As a result, District 5 gained more miles for lane resurfacing requirements over the upcoming 5 years. At the same time, our allocations were adjusted to accommodate pavement rehabilitation needs. With the substantial increases in costs, we had to redirect our focus to the core of our resurfacing needs. Currently, the district has 192 lettings planned within the next 5 years, and over 50% of those are resurfacing projects. Additionally, given the volatility in bid results over the last few years and acknowledging project costs continue to increase, we were intentional with reestablishing responsible contingency levels that have been variable in the past and hit critically low levels in the last 2 years. In building our upcoming tentative work program, our focus continues to be on FDOT's Compass, a reflection of 6 core areas that navigate Florida's transportation system and offer a sustainable future for our region. You'll see an example of this compass on the right, which centers on communities. Safety remains our top priority while we continue to build resiliency, develop our workforce, leverage technology, and strengthen the supply chain. On this slide, we will see some deletions. Deletion occurs when funding is removed from the upcoming work program. As I said, this outlines deletions for the TPO region from the tentative work program. However, technically, none of these projects were actually deleted. The project on the top left is a local agency program, or LAP project, where CEI services are going to be administered under a district continuing services contract. The programming was deleted from a local agency phase and added to a district phase, so the project does still remain in the work program. The projects on the bottom left and top right are deletions in the sense that the funds are no longer programmed under these projects. However, the work that was to be done under each project is being accomplished under other projects. So while the projects themselves were deleted, the work is still occurring. Balancing the 5-year plan is a challenge each year, and one outcome we try to avoid to the extent possible is impacting projects. We are required to balance project needs, programs, and targets against available funding sources, and sometimes this does cause projects to shift due to where funding is available. Construction letting for the project on the left has shifted from late 2025 to mid-2026 as a result of this balancing effort. The project on the right reflects a grant that was deferred from fiscal year 24-25 to fiscal year 26-27 based on coordination with the space agency. This table displays the amount of federal, state, and local funds allocated to the Space Coast TPO within the next 5 years of the tentative work program. The first 2 years are significantly higher than fiscal year 2026-2027 due to large resurfacing projects on I-95 in those years. The latter 2 years are lower than the earlier years because we've not yet identified and programmed resurfacing projects in those years. This slide provides the same information from the previous slide, but by project type instead of by fiscal year. And to briefly go through what each of these project types entail, safety projects would include things such as paved shoulders, urban corridor improvements, signing and pavement markings, pedestrian safety, intersection improvements, and other safety projects. Capacity would be widening, new interchange, and addition of turn lanes. Preservation is resurfacing and bridge rehabilitation. Multimodal is transit, aviation, and space. Operations would include signal upgrades, ITS improvements, traffic control devices, traffic ops improvements, and addition of right turn lanes. Bike and ped is pretty self-explanatory. It's our sidewalks and bike paths and trails. And then miscellaneous kind of captures everything else: maintenance, landscaping, parking facilities, lighting, electric vehicle charging, and planning. So we'll now take a look at a few projects that were added to the tentative work program within Brevard County and Space Coast TPO. So this slide includes 5 resurfacing projects, all of which have design funded in our next fiscal year and construction funded in fiscal year 26-27. The top project, I-95 from State Road 46 to north of State Road 46, has a project length of 3 miles and a total of $13.4 million programmed. The next project, I-95, north of State Road 528 to south of State Road 50, has a project length of 7.7 miles and total programming of $37.8 million. State Road 528 from west of Sykes Creek to State Road 401 has a project length of 4.3 miles and $12.6 million of funding. State Road A1A from State Road 520 to George King Boulevard has a project length of 3.1 miles and $7.2 million of funding. And finally, State Road 507 from south of Lake in the Woods Drive, Sun Lake Road to US 192 has a project length of 2.6 million and 2.6 miles and $7.3 million of funding. Moving away from resurfacing, on the left of this slide is a widening turn lane project on State Road 524. Design of $7.4 million is programmed within the next fiscal year. On the right is another fiscal year 24-25 project, a LAP project with the city of Satellite Beach. It's a $3.2 million project that will be constructing safety improvements along Jackson Avenue. I'm happy to present that also added in fiscal year 24-25 is a $3.5 million project development and environmental, or PD&E, study of the I-95 and Malabar Road interchange. Wrapping up our look at key projects, on the left, we have 2 I-95 rest area improvements programmed for design in fiscal year 27-28. On the right is another local agency project, or LAP project, with $15.5 million programmed for design and construction of an intermodal station. In summary, the tentative work program includes 15 TPO priority projects totaling $98.9 million. Before closing, I'd like to share some information on grant opportunities for other possible project funding. Competitive grants available include PROTECT, which are for resiliency type projects, MEGA for large dollar complex projects, INFRA for nationally significant multimodal freight and highway projects. These are competitive grants for multimodal freight and highway projects of national or regional significance to improve the safety, efficiency, and reliability of the movement of freight and people in and across rural and urban areas. And then Safe Streets for All, or SS4A. In addition, there are multiple Federal Transit Administration, or FTA, grant options. Most of these grants do require an FDOT letter of consistency for support, and you can reach out to our District 5 contact, Alice Giuliani, and she would be happy to assist with any of those needs. So this does conclude the presentation, but I did want to share a link to the District 5's work program public hearing information, where you can view the reports of all of the projects that are included in the tentative work program, as well as access a GIS map that'll allow you to look at the locations of the projects. I've also included my contact information here, so if there are any questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to me. I do appreciate the opportunity to present today, and with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa? Go ahead, Arlen.
I have one question on the the rest areas on 95, and it probably includes a lot of other major roads also. Is there any money being spent for, EV, electrical charges for cars?
So not directly as the rest area projects, but we do have some standalone projects on each of the key interstate corridors that are looking for locations to put electric vehicle charging within close proximity to the interstate. So it wouldn't be at the rest areas themselves, but there would be specific locations that would offer that opportunity to individuals.
Okay, because as we move forward, they want to, increase the number of electric vehicles all over the place, and people can't go any distance if they don't have the charging stations appropriately.
I have an electric vehicle myself, and I completely agree with that. It's very difficult to go a long distance without those, so.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, other questions? Josiah, go ahead.
On slide 7, the 5-year outlook, what time horizon are those resurfacing projects allocated? And who does the allocating of that?
So I want to make sure I'm getting back to the right slide.
The 5-year outlook with the drop-off in fiscal year 26-27?
So we do basically when we're programming our resurfacing, we do it 2 fiscal years out. So for example, this particular cycle, we program the resurfacing projects in fiscal year 26-27. So next cycle, we'll do 27-28, and then the following cycle. So basically, we do it 2 years out. So that's why the latter 2 years don't have those projects. Is that answering your question? Okay.
Ginger, go ahead.
Perfect slide. I'm kind of curious on how we sit financially compared to all the other districts and counties in the state.
That is something I would have to look into more specifically. That's not something that I know, off the top of my head. I do know that depending on the different areas, District 5 is usually either the top in the state or number 2 in the state. How, the TPO themselves within that ranking, I'd have to look and it looks like Georgiana might have some information.
Well, it's a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about. And Lisa, please don't think I'm killing the messenger here.
No,
Because,
that's okay.
I have thick skin for you. You've got broad shoulders, I know. But what strikes me, in this presentation is that the only new funding coming from the DOT for our priority projects is the I-95 and Malabar PD&E. That's it. And of course, we've had a lot of lean years, year after year after year, and it's really kind of getting to the point where we really do feel that our transportation system is falling behind. A few things I wanted to point out is that, over the years, the DOT, has made suggestions that, we need funding partners to try and move our priority projects forward. And I will say that the cities and the county have really embraced that. We have had several of our priority projects, Malabar, State Road 524, project in Titusville, where they are state roads, and the cities have put money on the table because they're so desperate to try and move these priority projects forward. So we've done that. The TPO has also added to a lot of 3R projects, as you know, because we want to be funding partners, especially if it is regarding bike ped, and if it's going to improve safety, and if these are components that are important to the cities, then we're willing to put our money on the project because we are a funding partner. The design of the A1A sidewalks through the beaches, the TPO has funded those projects. And unfortunately, the construction funding, we were hoping that the department would fund the construction phase of the sidewalks, but the department has not been able to do that. And so now those projects are going to go on the shelf, unfortunately. And then the design is going to get old and we'll have to require a design update. And, we're also working with our local governments to apply for grants. I know the department is definitely pushing that. We want to try and bring in that federal money into Florida, and the department's done very well, and Florida's done very well with those grants. We funded the Ellis design, and we are very hopeful that we get that grant. But the department, we would be very appreciative if the department would be considering applying for grants for Brevard County projects on state roads, specifically State Road 528, the widening of 528, which as of right now, the construction for 528 and the 401 bridge is not even included in the SISCOS feasible plan, which means we cannot include it in the TPO's brand new long-range plan. This is really important for the members to understand this because this is a problem. We understand funding has become very competitive, and the department is trying to juggle a lot of different MPOs within the district. There's a lot of need here in the Central Florida region, but I think it would be very helpful if the department could come and maybe present on funding, perhaps maybe in February or March, specifically, explain the money. For instance, district dedicated revenue, state funding that should be coming back into Brevard County. How is that money being spent? How has it been spent in the past 5 years? And how is it being spent within this tentative work program? I think that would be very helpful to know, just to understand that we're getting our return on the investment that is being made at the fuel pump, that we're getting our fair share. And nothing this isn't directed at you, Lisa.
I understand.
It's just really important that we understand where the money's going and that we're not falling behind in comparison to the other MPOs, to Ginger's point. Because we have a lot of needs here.
Well, I've traveled, I'm a cyclist, and go to Polk County, Indian River County, and I see much superior facilities than what we have here. And it's been going on for a very long time, and I'm curious where we stand and why we're the redheaded stepchild at getting funding for things.
I'm more than happy to, specifically look into those areas. I can't necessarily speak to whether those are things that are being done by locals, whether, those are on the Sun Trail, network, that perhaps they're getting Sun Trail funding and perhaps.
I ride in the road. I don't ride on the trails.
Okay.
I hate the trails.
Yeah.
But it depends on the area. We understand that. But I think that would be very helpful. I think it would help to educate a little bit about the money. We don't really go deep into the funding, and I know it can be very complicated. I know that there's different fund codes and it's categorical, but I think it would be helpful as we move into the development of the new work program later next year to make sure we understand and we feel comfortable that we are getting, again, our fair share as we move forward. I think that we would very much appreciate that, Lisa.
I'm very happy to come and do that. If it's okay, I would like just to say a couple things to comments that you made. In general, we have not added a lot of new projects to the work program outside of the resurfacing project or program for the 3 years that I've been in this position. As I indicated, with cost increases, inflation, et cetera, there just has not been a lot of funding to put toward anything new within the district. You commented about partners providing funding. I personally want to say thank you very much for those partners that are providing funding. And I appreciate that the TPO has also been, providing funding towards some of the state roadway projects. A lot of the other MPOs and TPOs don't do that. A lot of the other local agencies don't do that. So, we certainly do appreciate that, and that does help some of those projects that otherwise would not be able to move forward. In terms of the deletions and deferrals, I had 2 slides in this presentation. I can tell you the number of slides in the presentation for others and MPOs and TPOs were much more lengthy and were significant deferrals. And were projects that had been deferred for multiple years, that each year, unfortunately, due to increases on those projects themselves, as well as the limited funding availability, we have had to continue to push those projects out. So, I do want you to know that, Space Coast is not being looked at any differently than River to Sea or Metro Plan or, any of the other areas. And, the impacts are being felt across the whole district, so.
Adam, go ahead.
Quick question for Georgette. Have we seen any results of the census that was completed in 20? Here it is, 23. We're almost done with 23. Have we gotten any of the benefits from the additional people that are living in this state?
Additional funding?
Yeah.
We
talked about this last year, and we were still waiting.
Yes. No, we have the results of the census. We, in fact, at the last meeting, we adopted our apportionment plan, to kind of review the membership to make sure that the membership was still in line. We did receive some additional funding for PL funds, but from from fuel tax collections, that's a different thing. So yes, we have received some additional funding for planning, for planning the transportation system, which we were able to, incorporate into our Unified Planning Work Program. But other than that.
Drop in the bucket. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pete, did you have a question?
A lot more than a question. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Oh, boy.
About 20 years ago at the department contractor annual meeting, it was brought out that gas revenues were falling. And there were some reasons given to us why gas revenues were falling. And the biggest one was that vehicles were becoming more fuel efficient. And so we buy less gas for the miles we travel. Last pickup truck I swapped out, the new one gets 20% better mileage than the old one. And the gas tax is the same. So you guys are going broke. And then on top of going broke, something we've been talking about for the last 15 years is the increase of the real estate prices, where 10 years ago, we said, hey, before too long, it's going to cost more for right-of-way than to build the road. Well, that's come and gone, and now the real estate prices, they've exploded and gone through the roof. On top of that, there's new pressures that you have in your little thing. Supply chain issues have really hurt the department as far as raising the prices. And I would love to see the contract increases per mile for new construction and resurfacing. You have a breakdown of material costs, but that contract costs where the contractors need more money to do the building, that's not shown as per mile, and that's substantially gone up too. Well, I think the average mechanic where I'm working now is getting $20+ an hour, and that's on the labor level. So the cost of labor has really shot up too, but you're not getting any more out of gas tax. You're actually getting less every year. Right. And we don't have any new ways to put money into the DOT coffers unless it's raised the gas tax. And in our little county, our so-called government leaders have been very reluctant to do that. And it's getting time where you're cutting projects now because the money just isn't there. And so you come and saying, hey, we're going broke, we can't build your crap anymore unless you dig in your pockets. And there's big resistance when it comes to digging in our pockets. And unfortunately, we can beg and squeal and all we want, but the money isn't there. And you're going to continue to cut projects and just do the priority. And the priority is interstates first, and then state of the system roadways second, and everything else third. So the big dogs get the money and the rest of us. When it comes to certain projects, though, you said we're being generous. That's only because they're cheaper. You know, it's cheaper to build the bike path and the sidewalk than it is to build a new road. So we're getting more of those, and you're telling us, hey, sucker, you want to move? Get a bike, walk, jump on a bus, because we just ain't building no more new roads, and that's what I understood from your presentation. Am I getting anything wrong here?
Well, I wouldn't say we're not building any more new roads, but our ability to add capacity projects in the past several years has been very limited, yes. So I wouldn't say you're getting it wrong. In fact, you probably could have just done most of my presentation for me. But, we, like you said, gas tax revenues have been going down. One thing that you didn't hit on that got hit on a few minutes ago is the electric vehicles. They don't use gas. So there's nothing coming from those right now. And I do know that that's something that legislatively is being looked at, user tax for electric vehicles, ways to try and, now that we're getting vehicles that don't use gas at all, how can revenue be generated off of those? So I know that that's even something that's being looked at the legislature.
Well, we're burning the gas to generate the electricity, and you get what, at the most 400 miles? Then it takes how long to charge, 2-3 hours? So just to do the infrastructure to use that kind of vehicle to travel is mind-boggling in itself. Our gas station, you'd have to multiply by 20 times the number of gas stations and pumps we have right now to get a 2-hour charge. And there's going to be violence to get that 2-hour charge too, based on the capacity you have now. If we went all electric, hey, I got to get there. My wife is sick. Get the hell out of here. Screw you, man. That's just the reality of it. So yeah, electric is fine for commuter. Right. Well, Metro Orlando, they have electric buses that they just use on the limo because they can't go on their routes or they'll run out of electricity. So, and we're just talking that electric will help, but it's not a cure-all. But then if you do electric, you get less money too because we burn less gas. So, there's a lot, there's a lot to be figured out there. Right, exactly. And the problem is money. Yep. And how do we get money? And we're all aware of that. And that's what we have to work on. So when you come back in a couple of months, what are you guys working on to get more money for infrastructure building? And the costs of everything are killing you. I get that. You know, the supply chain shortages, wow, that took half of your funding right there. But hey, that's what we're short on is cash. So we got to dig in our pockets if we want more, because they ain't just going to happen the way things are set up now. And no, I couldn't have done your presentation for you. Your department, I'm a contractor, we think different.
Thank you, Pete. Bob and then Eric.
Lisa, thank you for the presentation, and Georgiana hit on one of the projects that's near and dear to to Port Canaveral, which is State Road 528 and 401. They are our two top priorities. First of all, thank you for the resurfacing west of State Road 3. My car alignment, thanks you very much. And I brought this up before. I know, one of the resurfacing projects that's coming up for State Road 528 west of Sykes Creek to the port. I know it's different color of money, but if that money could be used to go and go into the 528 project to move that along quicker, certainly that would be a great thing. It only takes one incident, car crash, breakdown, what have you, on 528 to cause a major backup due to the increased cruise passengers and cargo volume that's coming out of the port. So also with a failure on the 401 bridge, all it takes is a hiccup there, and we have backups that in the last month have gone almost all the way back to State Road 3 on Merritt Island. So if there's any way to think out of the box, so to speak, on if this, was it 12.6 million can go and help kickstart that project, we're definitely willing to look at anything that can be done. But thank you.
Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, let me ask one specific and then one general question. So back on one of the slides, you have on the intermodal station development, there's funding for $15.5 million, and then it says design 26, 27, and construction 27, 28. I know it's early, but do you have some sense, is that money more earmarked on the early on the design stage, or is at this point it's just sort of a placeholder, and then in a couple of years that'll be more developed? And just talk a little bit about what that money represents.
So that's actually a local agency project, so I'm going to defer to Georgiana for some additional information on that.
So Eric, thank you, because I meant to mention that just to make sure the members understand what this is. This is all TPO funding, basically 2 years of our funding in fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 28. Our governing board, and we talked about it here with the committees, agreed to, as a placeholder, and that is what it is a placeholder, to set aside 2 years of our federal funding within those years for the potential design and construction of an intermodal station at the COCO location. Okay. That is what it's for. And of course, right now, we are in the feasibility study, working with the city of COCO and DOT and partners to understand what that looks like. And so very early stages, we don't know if we're going to be ready to go into design by fiscal year 26, 27, but we are trying to be proactive. We wanted to set it aside really as seed money to say, look, we're serious about this. Brightline is aware of it, and I think we're heading in the right direction as we move through this feasibility study. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question is, on the slide that had the amount of money over the 5 years and then the total, the question just is about transparency. Would I be able to, let's say, go to the state website and see a list of all the counties in the state and then sort of do a comparison for similar populations, infrastructure, and things like that to kind of, I know, people are talking about like allocation, just out of maybe curiosity and researching how the money is kind of distributed through the state.
Absolutely. So this is the link to our District 5 site, if you take off the District 5, it takes you to the state work program public hearing site, and you can see each of the districts. So you'd be able to pull up their information, see how the information's out there. The GIS site, on the main site, there's a GIS link as well. So that GIS link should also help you to be able to see on a statewide basis. Excuse me.
Okay, Greg and then Henry. Greg, did you have a question, comment?
Yeah, I think my general comment has to do with, I'm not a native Floridian, although I've been living here since I've been 12. And one of the things that I've noticed as a non-native is when, it's my opinion that when are we going to learn that growth doesn't pay for itself? We keep kicking the can down the road, and I think what we're experiencing right now is being kicked. That's my comment.
Thank you, Greg. Henry.
I'll try to be quick, and we can talk about this after the meeting if you wish. But it has to do with the I-95 Malabar Road interchange. With that new interchange down at the south end of Babcock Street, are there techniques by which you can see the favorable impact that particular interchange has on the diminishment of traffic on Malabar Road between I-95 and San Filippo?
That's something I would have to look into. Unfortunately, that's not something that I know right off the top of my head.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I'm happy to look into it for you.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Lisa? Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, most of the questions I had have been asked, and certainly appreciate those that have been asked.
Can you give him a microphone, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Has the FDOT worked with Florida Light and Power in order to estimate the demand on electricity with the anticipated growth of EVs in the state of Florida?
I don't know that we specifically have worked with Florida Power and Light. I know that there have been, at the central office level, they have, as I said, they've looked to see where we can put in different electric vehicle stations. I know the legislature is looking at ways to gauge, as I said, we don't get gas tax off of an electric vehicle, so trying to determine how we can, whether it's through some sort of a user fee or some sort of a, fee per mile, some way to begin generating income from individuals who have electric vehicles that are not purchasing gas. But in terms of, the specific usage and cost of usage, I think honestly that's going to, vary per different electrical, what FPL charges is going to be different than what Duke charges is going to be different than, what a city municipality that has their electric may charge. So the cost is probably going to be dependent on where that energy is being drawn from. I'm not sure if that's addressing your question or.
Well, partly. My concern is our electrical distribution system is finite. I mean, it's a certain amount, and you apply more usage onto that system. And EV, I've seen some studies that suggest that the charging stations at home versus those outside of the home all have different costs and different demands, and that it is substantially more than what the community uses. And I was just wondering if FDOT had taken a look at that.
I don't think so, because FDOT is such a small piece of that overall market. So I don't know that that's something that we've looked into, but I can certainly check and find out.
I'm wondering how you can plan if you don't know.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Any other questions or comments for Lisa? Okay, Lisa, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Next, we'll move into reports. Our first report is from the FDOT.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Mr. Chair, times two.
Morning.
Okay, so you heard enough from the FDOT today. I'm just going to go through the upcoming projects that are on our construction report. Since unfortunately you only have the October report in your agenda packet, I'm going to update you with the November report. I also put a supplement next to the agenda out on the table if you want to grab a copy of that. But the purpose, let's see, for first project, US 1 from Miller Cove Road to Pineda Causeway, which is to rehabilitate the existing drainage and outfall to the Indian River. The former start date for that project was January 2024, but the contractor was ready to go a little sooner, so that project had actually started on December 5th, so it's already in progress. The project that everybody is very interested in, State Road 500, US 192 at Hollywood Boulevard, has been pushed yet another month to January 2024, and that is once again due to shortages in construction material and equipment to do the project. The safety project on State Road A1A from Crescent Beach to south of Minuteman Causeway was also due to start this month, but unfortunately that has also been pushed to January 2024. And that is because at the public meeting, there was some public concerns about the raised crosswalks that they were going to install. So they decided to wait on the project, do a reevaluation to address those concerns to make sure that the public is comfortable with what we're doing before we actually break ground. So hopefully we'll be able to begin that in January 2024. And a new project had come on the November construction report that wasn't on the October. And that's the northbound US 1 from Rocky Point Road to Malabar Road, where they intend to extend the life of the roadway. Let's see, this is a repavement, US 1. So that new project has been added, and as of now, the outlook for the start of that is February 2024. So that's all I had for you today. If you have any questions or tomatoes left after Lisa talked, please.
Any questions on FDOT projects? Okay, you're off the hook.
Oh, am I?
Do we have a question? Ginger, did you have a question?
I'm just curious, we talked earlier before the meeting about the Any Atlantic project that got such negative press on TV, the traffic tables that were installed that caused some damage to some of the vehicles coming through there. I was just kind of curious, what was the cause? Was it communication?
I can find out for you, Ginger. I will definitely do that.
People seem to be pulling back on different methodologies for different forms of transportation other than car, and just trying to figure out what happened to that particular project, and also the waste of money that could be used for other projects that would have been feasible.
Okay.
That the speed bump?
I'll see what I can find out for you. Yeah.
Was that the speed bump?
Yeah, they were complaining about.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, I'd like to really comment on that speed bump, because I have the pleasure of driving in the old downtown Orlando, Delaney Park, Wadeview Park, where you have one of these speed bumps. If you don't go 10 miles an hour, everything out the back of your pickup's going to fly on the road. That's a standard operating speed bump. I slow down to 10 miles an hour and I look out for them because I know they're coming. People over on Indian Atlantic are bitching, oh, I hit it too fast, you know. Well, that's the idea, the speed bump. You hit it, and if it jars you a little bit, you're going to pay attention where it's at, and you're going to slow down. That's the way they're designed. No sympathy there. Problem is the politicians got involved. Well, that's the job of a speed bump, to slow you down. If you hit it and you say, well, I went too fast, I felt it, slow down and you'll do just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Did
Pete.
that answer your question there? Or?
Well,
Not really?
I'd just
Okay.
like to know why the project failed.
I don't know all the details, Ginger, but I think that technically it's not a speed bump or a speed hump. It's a raised table. And you're right, Pete, it is supposed to slow folks down. I mean, that's the whole reason for the project. There's a high pedestrian count along the corridor. I think it was perhaps, it could have been pushed out in a way where the public was aware of it. Everyone was just.
Well, it seemed the elected officials were not aware of the situation, and I found that unusual.
I don't know
Maybe I'm
if that's
naive.
true. I don't know all the details, but I know that the public, the traveling public was, you know, they were being elevated, you know, flown
Right.
through the air, which really does say something about how fast they were traveling to begin with.
Well, I drove it last night, and there was no conformity to the speed in that section at all. It was 45
So-
miles an hour as I was traveling the 30.
Yeah. So I think that there should have been more of a public outreach. You know, people needed to be aware of it. That was the biggest thing, and from what I heard. Now, I don't know if they're going to be ripped out. I don't know if they've already been ripped out. I'm not sure.
They're gone.
They're gone, okay. Well, I'm not sure what the alternative is.
I'm just trying to think if we learned anything from the project. That's all.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments, Greg?
Yeah. One quick question. You hadn't introduced yourself. You're Jonathan, maybe?
No, I'm Chuck Coppernell. Jonathan is the liaison administrator.
Okay, great. Just a quick question. On one of the first current project as listed, the 447085-1, State Road 501 from 520 to Industry Road. It is a safety project. And I know early on in the design phase, we had provided red lines and comments to potential bus stop improvements. And we believe, or I believe, that some of those improvements had been incorporated. Obviously, with construction started, I'm keeping an eye on those now, but I never did see a final. I did send an email this morning to the FDOT project manager asking him for that. I know in the past when that's been provided, you know, those files are so large, they've Dropboxed them to me.
Right.
So if I can make sure you have my contact info, I would appreciate that very much.
Not a problem. After this meeting, we'll get together.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you very much for your help.
You bet.
Anything else for Chuck? Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, folks.
Appreciate it. Next up, bicycle, pedestrian, and trails. Morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. The Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee met last Monday, December 4th. You do not have their most recent meeting minutes in your agenda package just because of the timing of the meeting and this meeting, so you'll receive those in February. They held their election of officers. We currently have Angelica Keene, who is our chair from UF-IFAS Extension, Alan Woolwich from Brevard County Housing and Human Services as vice chair. And we also received the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan Goals and Objectives presentation. There was another, great discussion around equity there as well. And then finally, they received a BPAC Roles and Responsibility presentation where they had their annual member orientation, which I believe Georgiana is for the TAC-CAC will be February. And then we started discussing a visioning workshop with them and the direction of it that will be held in January. And so their next meeting will be on January 29th. That will be a strategic visioning workshop for them to discuss their roles and their vision of the committee. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Sarah? Okay, thank you, Sarah. Next is the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board.
Thank you. The Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board met on December 4th. Meeting highlights include the following action items and presentations: annual approval of bylaws, approval of annual operating report, approval of 2024 meeting date calendar. A goal was established for moving 1% of paratransit users to the fixed routes. A presentation on government in sunshine, or a review of the sunshine laws, was presented by Heather Balzer of the County Attorney's Office. An overview of board members' duties was presented by Terry Jordan, Space Coast Area Transit. Transit Development Plans, Goals, and Objectives was presented by Nick Lepp of HDR, much as he did for us this morning. Our fixed route counts are up 6% over last year, and our demand response miles have increased slightly over last year. Space Coast Area Transit and the Space Coast TPO are currently in the process of advertising 3 available membership positions. They are also seeking to fill available agency-appointed members. The next TDLCB meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 12th at the Vieira Government Center at 10:30. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next will be the public engagement report by Abby. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Abby Hemingway, and I'm the Public Information and Outreach Manager for the TPO. And happy holidays. Before we chat about some of our recent public engagement activities, I wanted to recap a few recent wins for our staff members. So we're going to travel back to October here. TPO staff attended the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council's Regional Resilience Collaborative Leadership held up at Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, where they engaged in conversations about resiliency. And our Assistant Director, Laura Carter, and our Senior Transportation Planner, Sarah, attended that. And then also in the same month, our Education and Outreach Coordinator, Shelby, hosted a regional helmet fitting certification course for community partners and law enforcement agencies in the Central Florida area. And she taught attendees the ins and outs of bike safety and proper helmet fit. These certified helmet fitters can now participate and order free helmets and materials through the statewide Pedestrian and Bicycle Resource Center, a program offered through FDOT. And then lastly, to celebrate Mobility Week and beyond, TPO staff participated in FDOT's Ride, Roll, Stroll Challenge, which asked participants to try a new form of getting around by recording transit, bike, walk, and carpool trips to compete for prizes. Our team leader, Shelby, she did an amazing job of encouraging our staff to get out and about to log our trips and to really try some multimodal options. And of course, this time of year in the fall, it's one of our busiest outreach seasons where we always review our wins and kind of talk about what we did in October and November. So we led multiple outreach events, beginning with Halloween. Our public involvement team wanted to focus on pedestrian safety during the month of October. You know, we have a lot of events happening for fall festivals, wellness nights at schools and things like that. So we kind of honed in. This is the one night a year on Halloween where children are typically struck the most because of the time of year that it is, and also in the evening. So we wanted to ensure that weeks prior, leading up to that event, we went out there and passed out reflectors and safety goodies, and Shelby really made the rounds. She went to many different communities, as you can see here in this collage. She went to Cocoa, Vieira, South Melbourne, Palm Bay, and Titusville. So we really tried to reach everyone there in the county. And then, of course, this was a big week for us, Mobility Week, which is put on by FDOT. It was extremely successful. We engaged in many outreach events to share information about traffic safety and multimodal options. In summary, with our partnership with Space Coast Area Transit, we participated in 12 events, had 7 news media features, worked with 10+ community partners, and most importantly, we got more helmets on heads, keeping people safe out there by distributing over and fitting 200+ free helmets. And then just to recap, hopefully you all attended our State of Transportation. This was a very successful event. We had many speakers from our modal agencies and our municipalities come and give an update on their transportation priorities and where they see themselves going in the future for our long-range plan in 2050. So this was a very successful event. We had many attendees and we got a lot of information out there. And then lastly, on November 19th, we recognized World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims at Riverfront Park in Cocoa. We paused and honored stories that tragically stopped short due to traffic crashes. This was an event where we took the time to stand with the families who have been impacted and underscore the change is vital, and our actions and behavior can really change a life. This is a regional event. We're looking to host it in multiple areas in Brevard moving forward. Shout out to the City of Cocoa who provided our space this year. But we also want to take the time to thank TPO Board Chair and Council Member Yvonne Minus, Council Member Lorraine Koss, and Vision Zero Leadership Team Member Miriam Moore for taking the time to speak at our event. Also, thank you to our CAC members. I see some of you here today who also attended that event. We want to thank you. In addition to representatives from Melbourne and Cocoa, the City of Cape Canaveral also attended the event. So it's really important to have this municipal support. Change comes from the top at our government. So the families were really excited that they actually saw leaders in our community at that event. In coordination with World Day of Remembrance, we also launched a social media campaign where we invited families to share the story of their lost loved one, highlighting who they were in life and not in death. This campaign received lots of attention, going back to the ultimate goal of humanizing these statistics. And then, of course, now we're going into the holiday season where we see many traffic crashes due to impaired driving, drunk driving, impaired driving. So we'll be partnering with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to highlight the importance of driving sober during the holidays. And as always, make sure you're following us on social media. We'll be posting lots of great stuff.
Greg, go ahead.
Yes, Abby. I just want to give a shout out to Shelby. She had added some goodies into our rail safety goodie bag that we hand out to the kids who get certified as junior engineers running on our little railroad up at the Brevard Museum.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Anything else for Abby? Okay, thank you, Abby. Appreciate it. Okay, next up on our agenda is a local government report. Are there any local governments that would like to share anything this morning? Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you. Just real quick in Cocoa Beach, thanks to DOT and the TPO and everybody, we have our mid-block pedestrian signals active and up and running. And so this Friday we have a pop-up kind of outreach educational event talking about how to use those. So that'll be this Friday from, I want to say 12 to 3. You can stop in anytime at Laurie Wilson Park. That's it.
That's great. Thanks. Appreciate that, Jared. Anyone else? Okay. Is there anything else to be brought before the committees this morning? If not, the meeting is adjourned. Happy holidays.
No meeting in January, but February.
Cute.